Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see, this is going to be a video response to several questions, other videos that I've seen in the last 2 weeks concerning chaotic characters and PvP in tabletop RPGs. First of all, I have to apologize. It's been close to a week since I've done my last video. I had very busy week this past week, and just didn't get around to having an opportunity to put anything up. So for those of you that have been following the channel, I really appreciate it. And I usually try to get out a video once every 3, 4, 5 days at the longest. So this week has been a little bit of an exception to that kind of pace that I try to maintain. And that goes to, these two particular questions, which I've been thinking about, and I decided to combine them up into one video because I think that they do go well together. If you're playing a character and that is of a chaotic alignment, and let's just say for sake of argument, we're playing any of the AD&D editions of Dungeons and Dragons. When you're playing a chaotic character, and I know there's that that trope out there of they tend to be chaotic stupid, and in some cases I've heard of GMs saying, well, you can't play that alignment in my campaign. Your character can't be that. It'll be too difficult to role play, or the other characters and the other players won't like working with your character if you are playing your character true to that alignment. And to be quite honest with you, I typically play chaotic characters, and there is a certain level of challenge to make sure that you're not playing them stupidly. You're playing them, in an intelligent manner. And just because a character is chaotic doesn't mean that they're functioning, in random actions continuously. It doesn't mean that they have no self-control whatsoever. To me, it just means that I look at it in the sense of like order versus, freedom, and, a rejection of, being very orderly in your actions, or, saying, well, if I have I may not stick to a particular code of conduct, if I see that there's an advantage to not following that. And so the character ends up, at least in the short term, first viewing, other player characters will see that character as, oh, well, he's very whimsical, or you never know what he might do in a situation. But in the long run, they will be able to start to see that, well, no, I can have certain expectations of what this character might do in a situation because I've seen, him or her act in a similar situation this way. And, not that that might not change once in a while, but a pattern will still be created. And that's just human nature. I mean, I don't know how you could randomize the way your character is going to react to the same situation, multiple times that you encounter it. You're going to set up a routine, and and then the variance might be, just very minor in some cases. So that's how I look at it, as far as being very orderly versus, being a little bit more freeform in the way the character is behaving. The other thing that I think, as far as playing a chaotic character, and let's even say the character is chaotic evil, which seems to be the most boogeyman of alignments out there. Playing a chaotic evil character, again, doesn't mean that you're you're a total sociopath, or a psychopath, and you're just going out there and you're randomly slaughtering everything that comes in your path. It means basically that your character's intentions are not good intentions, and they're not motivated to follow certain rules, and an orderly society. They're all going to be very self-centered, and they're going to have that ill intent to be self-centered, or to be greedy, or to whatever. And then it doesn't mean a lack of intelligence, or even a lack of wisdom, which I think a lot of people look at the alignments, and they'll assume that a chaotic evil character, once again, has no self-control, and doesn't have a very high wisdom, or doesn't make wise choices. You can make wise chaotic evil choices. Now, you might have a very short career living that way, and following that kind of an alignment, because it is going to put you in riskier situations. It is going to make you, enemies, along the way, because you're so self-centered and evil-minded, that you're going to attract that negative response to your actions. But I mean, bottom line, it's just, chaotic doesn't really mean that your character must be chaotic stupid. So that was the gist of what to avoid, was playing characters chaotic stupid. And I think that if you're a good role player, and you're fairly intelligent about how you want to interact with the rest of the group, then there's ways of you doing it, and it's still being a beneficial role-playing experience. So now I'm going to segue right into the next video response, and that was to PvP in a tabletop RPG. So most of the PvP that I have done has not actually been in tabletop RPGs. It's been in massively multiplayer RPGs, so computer game RPGs, and there, in some cases, depending on the game that you're playing, that is the true game mode. So that is what people are going to that game in order to engage in. So games like EVE Online is specifically a player versus player RPG. Now, you might be in a corporation with fellow members of that corporation, and you're working towards a common goal. But at the same time, the culture of EVE Online is really unique, in the sense that you still have to watch out for infiltrators into your corporation, you still have to, watch out for potential backstabbers, for instance, and that game was really quite particular in in that was that you had a lot of buddy killers in that game. You always had to watch your back and never truly trust anyone while playing. And although a lot of people unfamiliar with that kind of game style or would probably say, well, geez, I don't want to have to worry about that kind of thing constantly. But that became part of the culture of the game. And it's the fact that it's one of the longest running MMOs out there, up to around 13 or 14 plus years now, possibly even 15. It's a long-standing game, and it's had that culture for a very, very long time, and it seems to still sustain itself, pretty well as far as that goes. So, PvP in a tabletop RPG, you have to, I believe that you have to have several different ground rules for it, and there's different ways to approach it. The first way is for if the GM is going to allow PvP in their campaign, or at their gaming table in general, then one school of thought is that, well, you inform all the players, make sure that they're comfortable in playing in that style, and let them know that it's not encouraged, it's not discouraged, it's just a possibility that the players may want to engage in some form of PvP. And there's many different forms of PvP. They're not always all right, I'm just going to suddenly stab this guy in the back and kill him and take his stuff. There is, PvP can be competitive, just in competing against each other. It could be, it could be nonviolent, by, well, I'm going to steal from the rest of the party. Any opportunity that I get to take extra treasure, I'm going to try to skim off the top of extra treasure. It could be social PvP, where your character is vying for leadership of the adventuring party, and just always trying to interject his or her decisions upon the entire group. So, and that could be both meta gamed and in-game type of interaction as well. Hopefully it's not meta, because that would be kind of difficult to play with players like that. But if it's the character's personality and the character's role, then that's just part of role playing. Then that might be an interesting thing to deal with. But when people hear PvP, they're basically talking mostly about players actively working against each other, and through their characters, and characters actually getting into fights and potentially even killing each other. So that's a little bit rarer, I would say, and it's it can be predetermined that, hey, this might happen, and so if everybody's on board with that, we're going to run with that. Some GMs might say, I'm not going to allow it at all, which I think is probably the more common ruling on PvP in tabletop RPGs. And then there's the third possibility, and that is where one of the players approaches the GM and tells the GM, hey, this is something that my character wants to do, and this is how he's going to go about it. And they have this discussion, outside of earshot of the rest of the players at the table. Maybe they have it, via PM or, email or just a separate discussion. And now the GM has to make the decision of, do I want to allow this? Do I want to inform the rest of the players of the possibility of any form of PvP rather than, specifically say, well, this player wants to do this? Or do I tell this player that wants to engage in some kind of PvP? Let's say something fairly benign like skimming the treasure off the top. There has to be a chance that the other players kind of detect this kind of thing, discover that it's happening, or even possibly just seeing that there's something about the character that seems to be a little bit off-putting. And so, the GM would inform that player that wants to do this PvP that, hey, there will be a chance that the other player characters will discover what you're doing, and, that will also have to be role played out. Now, the danger, and I'm certainly can understand why some people would want to avoid this kind of gameplay. The danger is that it does become meta, and players do start to become aggravated with this one player who's playing his character that way. And so they might just say, I'm not willing to play it this way. You shouldn't allow it, and then it stops. Or they might just come straight out and retaliate against the character, and they all gang up and kill the character off. And then they basically let the player know, hey, if you try to play as another character similarly, we're not going to stand for it. And so it really shouldn't be something that I think you do in a pickup game, at a con or anything like that. I think that the group of players have to be very familiar and comfortable with playing with each other, and and this should not be something that is that's commonplace, because it is going to be a very rare occurrence to take place. I would even say it shouldn't be done if your particular gaming group has a set of characters that are their primary characters. This might be done in a different type of a totally different campaign with a different set of characters. Perhaps it's a chaotic or an evil campaign, or it's just a campaign that's set in a setting where that kind of backroom deals and backstabbing kind of thing takes place more often than in a different setting. So so for the most part, those are the two issues that I have seen come up on video responses, and it was something I wanted to talk to a little bit. I have some experience in both playing chaotic characters and PvP, and I hope that you found this of some value. So once again, thanks you for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave questions and comments. And I always try to respond to comments as well. And I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime very soon. Just one last note, I'm going to be doing several uploads this weekend. So I hope not to deluge the channel too much with too many new videos in rapid succession, but because of the delay, there's a few things that I do want to get out there. I had a pretty productive week, and actually picked up a lot of materials and stuff that I want to put out there and show you as well. So once again, thanks for joining in, and have a good afternoon.